Awakening begins. There are messages that do not arrive by accident. They arrive when you are finally ready to hear them. Not when life is easy, but when silence becomes too loud to ignore. If something brought you here today, don't dismiss it, because some moments are not random. They are recognition, a quiet calling from within something you have always felt but never fully understood. This is not entertainment. This is a reflection, and if it feels personal, that is because it is meant to be. The feeling of being different. There is a moment in life when you start noticing you don't fit where you used to belong. Conversations feel shallow, priorities feel misaligned, and the world starts to feel like it is speaking a language you no longer understand. You begin to question everything, not out of confusion, but out of awareness. Something inside you refuses to accept what once felt normal. And this is where the journey begins, not in certainty, but in discomfort, because awakening often starts with disconnect. The silent question within. Deep inside, there is a question you rarely say out loud. Why do I feel this way? Why do I see things differently? Why does life feel like it is calling me somewhere else? This question does not come from weakness. It comes from depth, from a part of you that refuses to stay asleep in a world of distraction. And the more you ignore it, the louder it becomes, until silence is no longer an option. The weight of awareness. Awareness is not always peaceful. Sometimes it feels heavy, because once you see beyond surface-level living, you can no longer pretend not to see it. You notice patterns in people. You sense intentions before words are spoken. You feel energy where others only see appearances. And while others call it overthinking, you know it is something deeper. It is perception awakening. Signs you are becoming aware. You start valuing solitude more than noise. You feel drained by environments that once felt normal. You begin questioning beliefs you inherited without reflection. Your intuition becomes louder than external opinions. You stop chasing approval the way you used to. And slowly you realize this is not a phase. It is a transformation. The isolation phase. One of the hardest parts of awakening is isolation. Not because you are alone, but because you feel misunderstood. People may still be around you, but few truly understand what you are becoming. And so you start retreating inward. But isolation is not punishment. It is preparation, a space where clarity grows without interference. Breaking old identity. There comes a point where your old identity no longer fits. The version of you shaped by expectation begins to fall apart. This can feel like loss, but it is actually release. You are shedding layers that were never truly yours. And in that space, something more authentic begins to emerge quietly, without announcement. Why resistance appears. When you change internally, resistance appears externally. Not everyone will understand your shift. Some may question it. Some may distance themselves from it. This is not rejection of you. It is reflection of their own limitations of perception. Growth often disturbs comfort. And discomfort is often the first sign that change is real. The inner strength you did not notice. You have been developing strength in silence. Strength not measured by how loud you are, but by how deeply you can endure transformation. You survived moments that changed you without breaking your spirit completely. And that is not weakness, that is resilience. You are becoming someone who no longer relies on external validation to feel real. The real meaning of being chosen. Being chosen is not superiority. It is sensitivity. It is awareness. It is the ability to feel life more deeply than most. It means you question more, you feel more, you notice more, and sometimes it feels overwhelming. But it is not a burden meant to destroy you. It is a lens meant to refine you. The turning point. Every awakening reaches a point where confusion turns into clarity. Not all at once, but gradually, like light breaking through fog. You stop seeking external permission to be who you are becoming. You begin trusting what you feel internally. And that trust becomes the foundation of your new direction. Returning to your true self. This journey was never about becoming someone new. It was about returning to who you were before the world taught you to forget. Strip away fear, strip away conditioning, strip away doubt. What remains is not emptiness, it is truth. Final message and call to action. If this message reached you deeply, do not ignore what it stirred within you. Reflection is not accidental. Awareness is not random. You are not lost. You are in transition. And transitions often feel like endings before they reveal themselves as beginnings. If you resonate with this message, take a moment to acknowledge it. Like this video if it spoke to you. Comment your thoughts below and share what you are going through. And subscribe to Return to Awakening because this journey is not meant to be walked alone. More messages are coming. And if you are here, it means you are already on the path, the rewriting of your path. There comes a moment in awakening when life no longer feels like it is happening to you, but through you. You start realizing that even the painful chapters were not meaningless. They were shaping something within you that comfort could never develop. What once felt like failure begins to reveal itself as redirection. What once felt like delay begins to feel like protection. And slowly, your perception of your entire past begins to shift. This is not imagination. This is awareness expanding beyond fear. The loss that was never lost. You may notice people, places, and opportunities fading from your life. At first, it feels like abandonment, like something is being taken from you. But in truth, what leaves cannot match where you are going. Not everything is meant to continue with you into your next level of understanding. Some connections dissolve not because you are wrong, but because you are evolving beyond the version of yourself that created them. The voice that becomes louder than fear. There is a voice within you that does not shout. It does not compete. It simply knows. And as you awaken, that voice becomes impossible to ignore. At first, fear tries to silence it. Fear tells you to stay the same, stay safe, stay accepted. But the voice within continues anyway. And the more you follow it, the less power fear has over you. The strange comfort in solitude. You begin to notice something unexpected. Being alone no longer feels like emptiness. It starts to feel like clarity. In solitude, your thoughts stop being influenced by external noise. You begin to hear yourself more clearly than ever before. And in that clarity, confusion slowly transforms into direction. The emotional weight of seeing too much. There is a burden that comes with awareness. You start to feel things more deeply than before. People's pain, hidden intentions, unspoken truths. And sometimes, it becomes overwhelming because not everything you see can be explained to others. So you learn silence, not as suppression but as protection of your inner peace. The unlearning process. Awakening is not only about gaining insight. It is also about unlearning what no longer aligns with truth. You begin to question beliefs you once never challenged. You start separating fear-based thinking from inner knowing. And with every layer you release, you feel lighter, even if the process itself feels uncomfortable. The point of no return. There is a stage in awakening where you realize you cannot go back to who you were before. Even if you tried, it would not feel natural anymore. This is not loss. This is transformation becoming irreversible. And although uncertainty may still exist, something deeper within you refuses to return to sleep, the breaking of old comfort zones. There will be moments when everything familiar starts to feel uncomfortable. The routines you once followed without thinking begin to feel empty. The conversations you once enjoyed start to feel repetitive and shallow. This discomfort is not random. It is growth pressing against limitation. It is your inner self refusing to stay confined in a smaller version of who you are becoming. And even though part of you may resist it, Another part already knows there is no going back. The emotional storm before clarity. Awakening is not always peaceful. Sometimes it feels like confusion, emotional intensity, and inner conflict all happening at once. One moment you feel deeply inspired. The next moment you question everything again. This emotional movement is not instability, it is recalibration. Your inner world is reorganizing itself to match a higher level of awareness. The invisible separation. You may start feeling a quiet distance between you and the world around you. Not because you hate people, but because you no longer relate to everything the same way. This separation is subtle. It is not physical, it is perceptual. You are standing in the same world, but seeing it through different eyes. The hidden strength in sensitivity. What the world often misunderstands as weakness is actually depth. Your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is awareness in its purest form. You pick up on things others overlook. You feel energy before words are spoken. You sense truth beneath appearances. And although it can feel overwhelming, it is also your greatest form of perception. The quiet rebuilding of identity. Without even realizing it, you are rebuilding who you are, not based on expectation, but based on truth. This rebuilding is slow, invisible, internal, but it is happening every single day. You are becoming someone who no longer needs to pretend in order to belong. The emotional loneliness of growth. There is a unique kind of loneliness that comes with growth. It is not the absence of people, but the absence of understanding. You may still smile in conversations, still participate in life, but inside you feel like you are walking a path few can see. And yet this loneliness is not permanent. It is transitional. It is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. The quiet confidence that begins to form. Slowly something new begins to emerge within you. A quiet confidence, not loud, not forced, but steady. You start trusting your inner direction more than external approval. You stop needing constant validation to feel secure. And this is where real strength begins to form, the shift from seeking to knowing. There comes a stage where you stop constantly searching for answers outside yourself. You still learn, you still observe, but you no longer depend on external voices to define your truth. Something within you begins to stabilize, not because the world becomes clearer, but because you do. And in that stability, confusion starts losing its grip. The silent detachment from old patterns. You may notice old habits losing their power over you. Things that once controlled your emotions no longer affect you the same way. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because your awareness no longer feeds those patterns. And what is no longer fed slowly fades away on its own. The deep realization of self-worth. There is a moment in awakening when you begin to understand your value on a deeper level, not as ego, but as recognition. You realize you were never meant to beg for attention, chase validation, or shrink yourself to fit into spaces that do not respect your presence. And this realization quietly changes how you carry yourself in every situation. The inner silence that feels like peace. As external noise loses importance, an internal silence begins to grow. At first, it feels unfamiliar, almost strange. But over time, that silence becomes peace, a kind of peace that does not depend on circumstances. Even in uncertainty, there is something within you that remains steady. The releasing of emotional dependence. You begin to notice that you are less emotionally dependent on people's opinions. Approval no longer defines your mood the way it used to. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop losing yourself in the process of caring. And that is a quiet but powerful form of liberation. The hidden preparation state. What feels like confusion or waiting is actually preparation. You are being shaped in ways you cannot fully see yet. Every challenge, Every silence, every delay is building resilience within you. And although you may not understand it now, nothing is wasted in this process. The strength of not reacting. One of the clearest signs of awakening is the ability to pause, to not react instantly, to observe before responding. This pause is not weakness, it is control. It is awareness choosing response over impulse. And in that space, you begin to realize how much power you truly hold within yourself, the disruption of old beliefs. There comes a point where beliefs you once accepted without question begin to collapse, not because someone forced you to change, but because your awareness can no longer ignore contradictions. What once felt like truth now feels incomplete. What once felt certain now feels limited. And this disruption is not destruction, it is expansion of perception. The emotional recalibration within you. As your inner world shifts, your emotions begin to reorganize themselves. Things that used to trigger strong reactions start to lose intensity. It is not suppression, it is understanding. You are no longer reacting from the same place you once did. And that shift changes everything about how you experience life. The realization of inner guidance. You begin to notice that your best decisions were never made from pressure or fear. They came from a quieter place within you. A place that does not speak loudly, but speaks clearly. And as you trust it more, your path begins to unfold with less confusion and more alignment. The breaking of external approval chains. There is a hidden chain many people live with without realizing it. The need for approval. The need to be accepted before acting, speaking, or becoming. But in awakening, that chain begins to break. You start moving differently, thinking differently, living differently, not to prove anything, but because you no longer feel bound by invisible permission. The emotional intelligence awakening. You start understanding emotions on a deeper level, not just your own, but others as well. You see pain behind anger, fear behind control, insecurity behind judgment. And instead of reacting with conflict, you begin responding with awareness. The weight and gift of seeing truth. Seeing truth is not always easy. Sometimes it isolates you. Sometimes it makes you feel like you are carrying awareness that others are not ready for. But truth is also clarity. It removes confusion from your path. And even if it feels heavy at times, it also frees you from illusion. The quiet dissolution of ego patterns. The ego does not disappear suddenly. It dissolves slowly through awareness. You begin noticing when you are acting from pride, fear, or defense. And instead of judging yourself, you simply observe. And in that observation, those patterns begin to lose their strength. The emergence of inner stability. As external validation fades in importance, something more stable begins to form inside you. A sense of groundedness that does not shake easily. Even when life becomes uncertain, there is a part of you that remains steady. And that stability becomes your new foundation, the subtle end of seeking validation. There is a quiet shift that happens when you no longer feel the need to constantly prove yourself. You still care about growth, you still care about improvement, but you stop living for approval. You realize that validation is temporary. It comes and goes depending on perception, but truth within you does not depend on external agreement. And in that realization, a deep freedom begins to unfold. The disappearance of old fear triggers. Things that once made you anxious no longer hold the same power. Situations that used to overwhelm you now feel manageable, even distant. It is not that life becomes easier. It is that you become clearer. And clarity changes how fear operates within you. The inner rewiring of perspective. Your perspective begins to shift in ways you cannot fully explain. You start seeing meaning in things you once ignored. You start questioning reactions you once accepted. This is not confusion. It is deeper understanding forming beneath the surface of your mind. And slowly, your entire way of interpreting life begins to transform. The silent strength of emotional control. You are no longer ruled by every emotional wave that passes through you. Instead, you begin to observe emotions without becoming them. This creates space between feeling and reaction, and in that space, wisdom begins to grow. Because not every emotion is meant to be acted upon immediately. The dissolving need for external direction. There was a time when you may have looked outside yourself for direction constantly. Opinions, advice, validation, confirmation. But now something is changing. You still listen, but you no longer depend. You are learning to stand within your own awareness and trust it more deeply. The expansion of inner awareness. Awareness is not static. It grows quietly, layer by layer. You begin noticing things about yourself and life that were always there but previously hidden. Patterns become visible, behaviors become understandable, choices become conscious. And this expansion is not loud. It is subtle but powerful. The breaking of mental limitations. Many of the limits you once believed were real begin to dissolve, not because circumstances changed, but because perception changed. You realize that much of what held you back was not external, but internal conditioning. And once that is seen, it cannot be unseen. The quiet confidence of inner truth. There is a different kind of confidence forming within you now, not built on achievement, not built on comparison, but built on inner alignment, on knowing who you are becoming, even when others do not understand it yet. And that confidence does not need to speak loudly to be real. The release of comparison. There is a quiet moment in awakening when you stop measuring your life against others. Their pace, their success, their recognition no longer define your worth. You begin to understand that comparison was never clarity. It was distraction. And as that distraction fades, your own path becomes more visible. The end of inner conflict. You start noticing fewer battles within yourself. The constant arguing between doubt and desire begins to settle. It does not mean uncertainty disappears completely. It means you stop feeding internal chaos. And in that stillness, decisions become simpler, cleaner, more aligned. The awareness of energy and presence. You begin sensing something beyond words. The energy of spaces, the intention behind actions, the truth behind appearances. This awareness is subtle but undeniable. It cannot always be explained, only experienced. And once you feel it, you cannot return to ignoring it. The quiet detachment from drama. Things that once pulled your attention emotionally no longer hold your focus. Drama loses its attraction. Chaos loses its appeal. You are no longer entertained by confusion. Instead, you find yourself drawn toward clarity, simplicity, and peace. The emotional rebuilding of trust. Trust becomes something you rebuild carefully, not blindly, but consciously. You no longer give it freely without awareness. You observe, you feel, you understand before you open fully. And this creates a deeper, more stable form of connection with life and people. The deepening of inner alignment. Something within you begins to feel more in sync. Thoughts, emotions, and intuition slowly start working together instead of against each other. This alignment is not perfect, but it is progressing. And every step toward it brings a sense of inner coherence. The silent transformation of identity. You are no longer the same person you were at the beginning of this journey. Even if your external life looks similar, something fundamental has changed. Your reactions, your awareness, your perception of self has shifted. And this transformation is ongoing, unfolding without force. The awareness that nothing was wasted. You begin to look back and realize even the hardest moments had purpose. Nothing was truly wasted, even if it felt meaningless at the time. Pain taught awareness, loss taught strength, silence taught reflection. And now all of it is becoming understanding, the deep understanding of timing. There is a realization that begins to form within you about timing. Not everything was meant to happen when you wanted it. Some things were never delayed, they were protected. You start seeing that what didn't work out may have been alignment correction rather than rejection. And this understanding softens how you view your past. The quiet end of internal resistance. There comes a stage where you stop fighting yourself as much. The resistance that once lived inside your thoughts begins to fade slowly. You are no longer constantly arguing with your own direction. And in that acceptance, a new kind of peace begins to settle. The subtle shift in emotional needs. You begin to need less from the outside world emotionally, not because you are closed off, but because you are becoming more complete within yourself. Attention, approval, and validation lose their urgency. And what remains is a desire for authenticity, not recognition. The awareness of hidden strength. You start realizing that you were stronger during your lowest moments than you ever gave yourself credit for. You endured things silently that shaped your entire perspective on life. And now that strength is no longer hidden. It is becoming conscious. The reduction of mental noise. Your mind begins to quiet in ways you did not expect. Thoughts still come, but they do not dominate you the same way. You are learning to observe rather than absorb every mental pattern. And in that observation, mental clarity starts to grow naturally. The deepening sense of self-recognition. There is a moment when you begin to recognize yourself more clearly, not the version shaped by others, but the version emerging from within. This recognition is subtle but powerful. It feels like remembering something you never truly forgot. And with it comes a quiet sense of belonging within yourself. The end of false identity layers. Many of the identities you once carried begin to fall away. Labels, roles, expectations, even self-imposed limitations. They no longer feel necessary to define you. And beneath them, something simpler and more real remains. The strength of inner stillness. Stillness becomes a form of strength rather than emptiness. You no longer fear silence or space. Because in that stillness you are not empty, you are aware. And awareness becomes your grounding force, the realization that you were always enough. There comes a moment when you stop trying to become worthy. You begin to see that you were never lacking in the first place. All the effort to prove yourself, to fit in, to be accepted, it slowly loses meaning. Because deep down you recognize something simple but powerful. You were always enough, even when you doubted it. The gentle return to authentic living. You start living in a way that feels more natural, less forced. You are no longer trying to perform a version of yourself for the world. Your words become more honest. Your actions become more aligned. And even if it feels unfamiliar at first, it feels real. The dissolving fear of judgment. The fear of what others think begins to lose its hold on you, not completely at once, but gradually. You realize that judgment often says more about the one judging than the one being judged. And this awareness frees you from shrinking yourself to fit expectations. The awareness of inner peace over external noise. External noise will always exist. Opinions, distractions, chaos, pressure. But you begin to choose something different. Inner peace over constant stimulation. You no longer feel the need to respond to everything. You learn to protect your attention. The strength of walking alone when necessary. You come to terms with a truth many try to avoid. Not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. And while this realization may feel heavy at first, it becomes empowering over time. Because you learn that walking alone is better than walking in misalignment. The quiet power of self-respect. Self-respect begins to guide your decisions. You stop tolerating what drains you. You become more aware of your boundaries, even if you do not always express them perfectly. And this awareness creates a stronger sense of personal stability. the transformation that others cannot see. From the outside, your life may look the same, but internally everything has changed. Your thoughts, your reactions, your awareness, none of it is what it used to be. And even if others cannot see it, you feel it deeply. The understanding that this is only the beginning. You begin to realize that this awakening is not the final destination. It is the beginning of a deeper journey. There is still more to understand, more to grow through, more to uncover within yourself. And instead of fearing that unknown, you start to accept it with quiet readiness, the awareness of divine timing in silence. There are moments when nothing seems to be happening, no progress, no signs, just silence. But within that silence, something unseen is aligning. Not everything meant for you arrives with noise. Some of the most important shifts happen quietly, beyond your immediate awareness. The detachment from needing immediate answers. You begin to feel less urgency to understand everything right away. The need for instant clarity starts to fade. You become more patient with the process, more accepting of the unknown. And in that patience, answers begin to reveal themselves naturally, without force. The deep trust in your inner path. Even when things do not make complete sense, you start trusting the direction you are moving in. Not blindly, but intuitively. You feel when something is right, even if you cannot fully explain it. And that trust becomes stronger than temporary doubt. The emotional maturity that emerges. You respond differently now. Not every situation deserves your full emotional reaction. You begin to choose your energy carefully, where you invest it, where you withdraw it. And this choice reflects growth that words cannot fully capture. The understanding of temporary connections. You start to accept that not every connection is meant to last forever. Some people come into your life for a specific purpose, then leave. Not as loss, but as completion. And once that purpose is fulfilled, holding on becomes unnecessary. The strength in letting go without bitterness. Letting go no longer feels like defeat. It feels like clarity. You release what no longer aligns without holding resentment. Because you understand that not everything that leaves was meant to stay. The quiet realignment with purpose. Something within you begins to align with a deeper sense of direction. Not a loud, dramatic purpose, but a quiet knowing. You feel drawn toward things that resonate with your inner truth. And even if the path is not fully visible, the direction feels right. The awareness that you are no longer who you were. You look back at your past self and realize how much has changed, not just in circumstances, but in perception. You think differently, you feel differently, you understand differently. And that awareness confirms something undeniable. You have evolved.